So this video is a follow-up, in fact, somewhat of a summary and rewrite of a previous video I literally just put out, so hopefully it doesn't feel redundant, but this video is a story in 200 pixels. Before we get to that, I did want to mention too that we will be checking out a handful of mocks toward the end of this video, some characters that I created for this story. So hopefully you stick around for those. And if you enjoy this type of content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. It's the best possible way you can tell me that you're enjoying this. But remember, I made this on paint.net. I have absolutely no skills when it comes to animation, so we're just going to go with a slideshow, essentially. We're starting out ages ago. On the island of Metru Nui, there was a great leader, Teridax Revealed. Now this leader, in his own time, came across an ancient artifact. In keeping this artifact to himself, he slowly became corrupted. Now, other characters did not notice this change. I mean, surely we can see that there's a change in color here, but maybe that's just a fresh coat of paint. As far as they know, this is the leader of Metru Nui. It is during this corruption that Duma starts to commission several members of the island, several of the inhabitants, the Matoran, to create various different pieces of infrastructure and machines, some of which are going inside of the Coliseum where Duma calls home. One such machine is responsible for the creation of the Vaki. These machines which were designed essentially to behave as law enforcement for the island of Metru Nui. Now, it's worth noting that Metru Nui does not just have Vaki, but does have a handful of guardians amongst the island as well. Two, to be specific, a Toa Likhan and a Toa Nadiki. However, within the last few years, Nadiki has not been seen. He's disappeared. I'm realizing you can still see. Oh well. Anyway, along with that, Likhan, recognizing that these Vaki could be a threat, and as they slowly start to turn on the Matoran populace, understands that he himself does not have enough strength. He alone is not enough to defend these Matoran, to defeat these Vaki. So rather than do it himself, he takes it upon himself to collect 6 Toa stones, which have been imbued with the power to create Toa from Matoran, which he knows about because of his own past exploits. Maybe he was there during the creation of these stones. He collects these 6 stones and offers them through his own agency to 6 Matoran, whom he has chosen out because of various factors, their ability to lead, for example, and so he gives these stones to what would become our Toa Metru. Now, in so doing, Likhan spends the remainder of his Toa essence, and thus himself becomes a Turaga. But he makes it known, makes these Toa Metru aware that although this is their first day on the job, they need to make their way to the Coliseum in order to find and ask Duma, hey, what is going on with these Vaki? Are you aware of this? Because this is definitely your land, your place. But these Vaki are turning against us. So the Toa Metru make their way to the Coliseum, but they are stopped by one of Duma's guards, Matoran guards, Akmu, who lets them know, hey, we've never seen you before, so how do we know you're a Toa? How do we know you're not responsible for these Vaki suddenly turning against these Matoran? You need to do something only the Toa can do. What Duma wants you to do is collect 6 great discs that are somewhere on the island, right? Oniwa, recognizing this because he himself has seen one of these great discs before, starts to understand, okay, so we need to find these 6 discs. How else can we find them? Well, let's ask some of the other Matoran. I knew as Oniwa that these discs existed, so surely some of the other Matoran do as well. So the Toa set off to find these other Matoran to claim these discs. Some of these discs will be found freely, but some of them will be guarded by a handful of maybe these dark hunters, who also act as maybe hired arms, if you will, for Teridax Revealed, enforcing laws on the land as well, but also secretly trying to find these discs. This is where we get Kreka as well. Inevitably, though, the Toa defeat this Dark Hunter, and they are able to find the 6 Matoran that they need, or the Matoran that they need, in order to find these 6 great discs. But that's not all they need to do, because any Matoran could find these discs. You need to do what a Toa can do. You need to imbue these great discs with your Toa powers, turning them into what I'm just going to dub as the Metruva symbols. I know that that's a silly name, Metru plus Nuva, but the reason I call them that is because the Nuva symbols are essentially to the Toa Nuva what these Metruva symbols or Metruva discs are to the Toa Metru. They are, in essence, their power. And when in the Toa Metru's possession, nothing is unusual. However, when taken away from the Toa Metru are going to lose that power. And this is the trap. So the Toa Metru collect their Metruva discs, they bring them back to the Coliseum. They have no reason to suspect that that is a trap, but obviously we know that Turaga Duma is bad because we have hindsight. It's 2024 for us here, right? And so they present these discs to Akmu, who brings them in, along with the Toa Metru, to Duma to finally have that seat in front of this great leader to ask what is going on. But this is where the trap is set. By presenting the discs to Duma, Duma takes these discs where he places them in some kind of machine, or he, has Akmu do it for him, right? When these discs are placed inside of the machine, when they are separated from the Toa Metru, the Toa start to understand that they don't feel the way they should. Their powers are being drained. What is going on here? Well, their powers are being drained. What does this mean for a Toa? In my head, I like to see it as this. When a Toa is separated from their symbol, an item that they are able to create at their own behest, essentially transferring the power, the thing that makes them a Toa, into an object, in this case the Great Discs. Not every object is able to become a symbol, right? But in this case, these discs are one of those objects. By transferring that power into these discs, and by then giving those discs away, no longer being in possession of those discs, essentially, they become Matoran again, but they're still trapped in their Toa Metru bodies. They don't transform into Matoran, but they no longer have access to their mask powers, and their elemental powers are diminished to the point of being negligible. So at this point, the Toa Metru are completely weakened, which is exactly what Duma needed. Because here's the thing. Duma needs three things. He needs to become Makuta, but he can't shed this Turaga shell without Toa power. So the Toa symbols, these Metruva discs, are going to supply that power. But on top of that, some of the machines that he has created are not only capable of creating Vaki, but also capable of turning these discs back into Great Discs, but not turning these into this, rather using the essence of these discs to create duplicates, a duplicating machine, which is then used to arm these Vaki. Now suddenly it makes sense that the Vaki not only come with Great Discs, but also come with the mandibles in order to shoot them. Makes sense. So, upon presenting these to Turaga Duma, Duma thus absorbs some of this power and uses that power to create a Toa seal. You see that he has all 6 of the discs, thus he has the power of all 6 of these Toa Nuva, or Toa Metru, and it takes the power of 6 elements, these 6 elements, to create a Toa seal. So he seals the Toa within their own power, right? And then Duma reveals himself to be Makuta. He doesn't shed his body immediately, obviously. He takes Nivok and leaves the Coliseum. And this is where we get back into Nidiki. This whole time, in the background, before the creation of the Vaki even, Duma had been running experiments on Nidiki, slowly transforming him, taking his Toa essence away and turning him into the Dark Hunter that obviously we got back in 2004. Except in this case, he's not a Dark Hunter, he has been deformed into this. This was for a handful of reasons, not just to create this massive beast, this powerful beast, but also to be used to model the Vaki later, hence why they have some similarities to the Vaki. It's also worth noting that Nidiki is still present, but he is a beast now. He does not have his Toa essence, or what is there is so minimal. But Akmu, upon returning from taking these discs to where they needed to be for Turaga Duma, overhears the fact that the guy he has been working for is not in fact Turaga Duma, but is Makuta. Realizing what he had done, because this is not what he signed on to, he was just trying to be self-serving, he understands that, oh crap, I've just released Makuta. And so Akmu has a change of heart. Rather than watch the Toa Metru suffer, he chooses to leave the Coliseum, to flee the Coliseum, unbeknownst to Turaga Duma, and find Turaga Lee Khan, to let him know, to make him aware of what has happened. So Turaga Lee Khan makes his way back to, well, the Coliseum. Once he gets into the Coliseum, though, in order to break this Toa seal, he's going to need to sacrifice himself. The remainder of his energy is going to go into this, and so he makes the Toa aware of what they need to do next. Now, Nadiki is, at this point, guarding the Toa, right? So he's within the Coliseum, and he is making sure that the Toa Metru do not escape, do not break free from their binding, right? So Likhan, of course, needs to get into here unnoticed, which, I don't know, he can do it. We'll write that in, right? But outside of that, once Likhan sacrifices himself, or right before he does so, he lets the Toa Metru know that they're going to need to A, destroy these disc duplicators to weaken the Vaki again, because not only do these disc duplicators duplicate great discs, but they actually infuse those discs with a portion of that Toa's power as well, meaning that the Vaki, which are robots that don't have any powers of their own, aside from maybe the stabs, and that's if I want to keep that in the story, when they have these discs, now are able to access some of the power from the discs, meaning they have not only elemental powers, but they also have the mask powers from that respective Toa. Not to the same degree as that Toa, like they're not as strong, but they have some of it at the very least, which obviously makes the Vaki more terrifying. They not only have this projectile now, but they can access these other abilities. So Likhan lets them know that they need to destroy this duplication machine and reclaim their Metruva symbols. In so doing, by absorbing that power back in from the disc, these discs have been enhanced, and this is going to transform them. So Likhan is going to die at this point. Before the Metru were able to reclaim, because I've got some of my slides here a little bit out of whack, before they're going to be able to reclaim their discs, they're going to have to battle Nadiki. And remember, they do not have any of their Toa powers at all, so they're going to have to do it through strength and strategy. But what they end up relying on is pleading to the remainder of the humanity or Toa essence within Nadiki to get Nadiki to realize what he is, right? At the heart, he is a Toa. And so they're inevitably going to succeed at this because they're not going to be able to defeat Nadiki at brute force, right? And so they will battle Nadiki. They will inevitably get Nadiki to switch sides, essentially, and Nadiki will be the one to destroy the machines. In so doing, unfortunately, killing Nadiki off as well. So we have lost Nadiki. So the Toa scoop up the mask from Likhan. They don't have Nadiki's mask because obviously he's not wearing a mask at this point here. And so they collect their great discs, transforming themselves into what I'm just calling the Toa Metruva. This is not my build, by the way, although we did happen on the same name. Rather, this is somebody else's, and I will link this down in the description below. We are going to see my build for the Toa Metruva here in a little bit, but that's at the end. We've got a handful more slides to get through. So that is, well, before the Toa Metruva, that is the end of 2004. So 2005 starts with the Toa Metruva. Now, Akmu lets them know, hey, if this is Makuta, then these are probably his plans. You can find him toward the sigil of Mata Nui. What is that? The sigil is essentially the heart of Mata Nui. I mean, it's kind of the brain too, but you know. And it is essentially the thing that Nadiki and Likhan were originally tasked to defend before, obviously, all the Vaki and stuff happened and they got distracted, right? So Makuta needs to make his way to the sigil in order to cause the Great Cataclysm, to put Mata Nui to sleep. By the time the Toa Metru get there, it is too late. Makuta has done exactly what he needed to do. He has shed the body of Turaga-Duma, thus Turaga-Duma is dead now as well. So we've lost 3 characters at this point, Likhan, Nadiki, and Duma. And Makuta has become Ultimate Duma, whatever you want to call it. I don't think it's going to be this build. I'm going to try and rebuild it in the future. I'll get to that. But the Great Cataclysm happens. Mata Nui, now sensing this disturbance, this disruption, right, turns inward and is aware of what is going on. He's too late to stop it, but before he falls asleep, what he ends up doing, well, we'll get to that here in a moment. So the Toa Metru make their way to the Great Sigil where Makuta is already. And though they are in fact too late to stop the Great Cataclysm, which is going to basically destroy the island, they can't defeat Makuta. They're not strong enough. as much power as they have, Makuta has all of their powers too. So rather, they use their same abilities, they use Makuta's tactic against him, and they also seal him in a Toa seal. They know that this is not going to hold for very long, but what Makuta has been doing this whole time, while he was still in his Turaga form, kidnapping Matoran, was putting those Matoran into Matoran spheres. So the spheres are near the Great Sigil. The remaining Matoran are collecting towards this Great Sigil as well, because they have been warned, I don't know, in some way by the Toa Metru that, yeah, you guys need to run. And so, in some way, the Matoran make it to roughly this area too, right? So the Toa can do a few things here at this point. They could free the Matoran from these spheres, but for what? At this point, the Great Cataclysm has started. Earthquakes and things are erupting everywhere. The ground is fracturing beneath them. The island and all of its infrastructure is basically gone, and they know that Makuta is going to break out of this seal. They cannot stop him. So rather than stay on the island, this is where they choose. We've lost. We're taking these Matoran with us, and we're taking them away. And that is what they do. One of the Rahi that is freed from the Great Cataclysm is what I'm just going to call the Water Strider. This is a prototype that was being worked on, I guess, sometime in 2004, or I guess a concept model, really, not a prototype, but anyway. So this is what they're actually going to use to transport the Matoran. Rather than a ship or an airship of some kind, I think this just makes sense. It's a Water Strider, for one thing, so it can get across the water. That's pretty cool. And it has the ability to carry these Matoran spheres, right? That's pretty cool. So anyway, I do plan on building this at some point, but that's going to be later on down the road. Let's go ahead and continue. The Toa Metru have now collected the remainder of the Matoran, and they've strapped them onto the last few Water Strider, Rahi, or whatever, and they make their way to Mata Nui. At this point, Makuta breaks free. And again, this is somebody else's mock. I will link them in the description as well. Props. Anyway, once Makuta breaks free, he has the plan to go and follow the Toa Metru to Mata Nui, right? He wants them to be gone. But, again, Mata Nui, the spirit, is still aware. He's still conscious. He's definitely losing his power. He's draining fast. He's getting fatigued. But with what is left of his power, he does a few things. He holds back Makuta. He stops him from being able to leave the island. And how does he do that? By doing to him exactly what he did to the Matoran. He doesn't put him in a Matoran sphere, but he does diminish him. And this is what turns Makuta into the McDonald's Matoran that we would see all the way back in 2001. And it makes sense for him to wear a How as well, since that is a symbol of Mata Nui, because Mata Nui is just going to slap it on him. Look what you did. Now, yeah, wear my face. Anyway, now Makuta is not going to be able to be held by this forever, but at least he doesn't have wings or the ability to follow the Toa Metru anymore, right? So at this point, he's stuck on Metru Nui. And that will give the Toa, Metru enough time on Mata Nui to sort of establish. We'll get back to them here in a moment. Lastly, before Mata Nui finally falls asleep, he needs new protectors of his sigil, because with his sigil exposed, he is vulnerable. He could die if that is destroyed. And so he utilizes the remainder of his power to grab onto the essence of Turaga and of Nadiki, and use their essence to create two more protectors for his sigil. This gives us Norik and Iruni. Now, these are not actually Duma and Nadiki. Rather, they're sort of using their body, using their spirit, and using the form that they're familiar with, right? This Metru form, to be alive, essentially, right? They don't have the memories of Duma or Nadiki, but they have their aesthetic, for lack of a better term. This is, at this point, the end of Wave 1 2005's story, and in fact is the end of the flashback. We don't have a Wave 2 2005 in the flashback. We have that in the Toa Nuva's timeline, in the present. So we make our return to the present. Makuta has been defeated in 2003 by Nuva, and now, sensing this new time of peace, the Turaga encourage the Toa Nuva, encourage the Matoran of Mata Nui to explore, directing the Toa Nuva specifically to the island they once came from, telling them their flashback story, pardon me, while the McDonald's Matoran make their way to another island, which they have discovered during their exploration that they were encouraged to do. This is Voya Nui. So now we're tying these two stories together. The Toa Nuva make their way back to Metru Nui to find that, again, it is still in shambles. Nobody has been there, aside from maybe, well, Makuta at some point made his way from Metru Nui to Mata Nui. We know that. But when the Nuva get to Metru Nui, it has had plenty of time to be in full ruins, right? And in fact, because of the Great Cataclysm, it is overrun with a bunch of different types of Rahi and still some Dark Hunters that have been left on the island, because Kreka was not the only one. This means that characters like Sidorak and Rudaka are Dark Hunters in this scenario, right? On top of that, the Visorak have been the dominant Rahi on this island, completely taking it over with their ability to either mutate or put to sleep any Rahi that they come across. Basically anything they come across, right? However, there are still some Rahi that exist on the island, including Kitangu, and that is where we get all of those sets as well. So the Nuva find Metru Nui, but find it to be overrun with these Visorak, whereas roughly around the same time in 2005, 2006, right? What we end up getting is the Voya Nui storyline starting still 2006. So the Ignition trilogy starts, the Matoran find Voya Nui, they find out about the whole like Mask of Life ordeal, understanding that if we get it, we can bring Mata Nui's essence back to life. We can reawaken him. But remember, the sigil that can kill him still exists on Metru Nui. And currently, even up until this day, the Toa Haga, Iruni, and Norik are protecting that sigil. They're the only thing keeping it from being destroyed, essentially. So we flash from the Toa Nuva's story on Metru Nui to the Voya Nui storyline, and now these are going on simultaneously, right? But our focus as the audience is on Voya Nui and Mavra Nui. In 2007, during the Mavra Nui stuff that's going on, the death of Mata Nui doesn't happen at random. It's not, oh, we got the mask, but now suddenly, conveniently, it's too late. No, rather, at the same time or roughly the same time that the Inika get the Mask of Life on Metru Nui, now that the Toa Nuva have found the island, they have enlisted the aid of the Toa Haga in order to basically free this island from the grasp of the Visorak. And so with the Haga sort of abandoning their posts, so to speak, the sigil is left open and it is destroyed in 2007 by one of the Dark Hunters from 2005, whatever the case may be, right? So that essentially is what catalyzes the death of Mata Nui in 2007. You could still have Mitoro sacrifice himself if you wanted to, although that always felt a little bit weird to me because it was treated as a really like heartfelt moment. But again, Mitoro wasn't like the special member. Like, we didn't spend the type of time with Mitoro that I think we should have for the death to be as impactful as it should have in 2007 specifically. Yes, we spent time with him in 2001, 2002, 2003. I know, obviously 2006 as well. But I think it could have essentially been somebody or something else that was able to save Mata Nui in this case, and that would have happened in 2008. So for the events of 2007 to 2008, Mata Nui is all but dead, right? The Toa make their way, the Toa Metru on Metru Nui, make their way to the sigil, which has been destroyed or deactivated or whatever, right? Broken into pieces, whatever the case may be. They collect those parts, right? And they have to take it to Karda Nui in order to unite it, let's say, with the Mask of Life in order to bring the sigil, the heart of Mata Nui, back to life and thus reawaken Mata Nui. That's it in a nutshell, essentially. Lastly, I wanted to mention, too, that, like I said, Nidiki's mask he didn't have one by the time he was mutated, right? So the Toa Metru couldn't leave with his mask, and Turaga Duma's mask was just lost to the Cataclysm, right? So they couldn't leave with his mask, but they did leave with Likan's mask when he sacrificed himself. That way they can give that mask to Jaller, and that's the reason why, like, Likan wasn't resurrected by Mata Nui in the way that the Toa Haga were. All right, that's a lot of talking. So let me go ahead and show you these mocks very quickly, starting with, let me go ahead and minimize this as well, my Toa Metruva build. This is going to look somewhat familiar because I am using the same color scheme as my modified version of my Toa Hordika, but it is this build right here. Now, Lego building this, it's not going to look exactly like this. But remember, this is replacing the Hordika in 2005, right? So there are obviously some parallels to the Hordika, except in this case, they're not mutated. Rather, they're powered up forms of the Toa Metru. So that's why I'm calling them Metruva. Metru plus Nuva makes sense. Okay, On top of that, currently there are no functions in the body build itself, but LEGO easily could incorporate a function. There's a lot more empty space in there than there is in the Hordika body because of the way that the body is oriented. But there is a function in the back in the form of the disc slinger, right? This is still using the Hordika arm, and it just slings the disc, right? Which I think works out reasonably well. It's not as accurate as shooting the discs or throwing the disc like a frisbee with the McDonald's Matoran, but I think it's still kind of cool, right? And since the discs are still important to the 2005 Wave 1 storyline that I came up with, it makes sense that these characters would have those discs as well. But the Ratuka spinners would be a modern projectile, right? Because they are given to us in the Toa Nuva's modern timeline, because the Toa Nuva in this case are what interact with the Vizrak. Also the Toa Haga, so it makes sense that they have it too. Okay, that's everything I wanted to go over in this video. And before I go, because I said 2 mocks, right? I mentioned at the beginning of the video that Taraga Duma was a Taraga of Light. The reason I mention this is because we obviously get Dakar in 2007, which has the Keat orange color mask, and it associates that Keat orange color somewhat with the element of light, which you could see Kitangu maybe as being a Rahi of light, since he has the ability to like cure or stop whatever it is that the Vaki Vizrak do. And I should also mention that during the Great Cataclysm, the Vaki are still roaming on the island, but by the time we're there in the modern timeline, their power source, whatever it may be, is gone. So the Vaki are gone in the second half of 2005. Okay, this right here is what I came up with for Taraga Duma, obviously built off the Taraga Likan platform or the Kazi platform, so it makes total sense. Using the Metru foot, good lord, my hand is shaky as hell. I think that this looks pretty good, all things considered. This is fully buildable using pieces that existed in 2004, with the exception of this pin with the long axle here, which obviously LEGO would just use the stud axle in there instead. And of course, this hammer doesn't actually exist as a single piece, but since Duma is usually pictured having a hammer as a weapon, I thought it made the most sense. And that was a damaged piece that I already cut up anyway, so, you know, works. Just an axle, gray axle at the base there. But yeah, so that is, right there, my Taraga of Light Likan. I keep saying Likan. Duma. Can you tell I've recorded this video a few times? All right, if you guys did enjoy this video, again, I really appreciate a like and subscribe because it does help the channel out. As always, I know that the video presentation probably seemed a little bit lazy, but it actually took a decent amount of effort to get that all together. And of course, like I said before, links for the Toa Metru that whoever else designed them built should be down in the description if that link is available, and link for that version of the Makuta Revealed will be available as well. That's actually kind of similar to the direction I want to take that Makuta, with the sort of aesthetics of Nivok plus Duma plus 2003 Makuta. So heavier reliance on like Mata Red, a heavier reliance on the wings from like Nivok, and some black color in there as well. And then obviously colors from the Toa Metru color scheme, dark bluish gray, right? And gunmetal from 2003. It's still his classic color scheme, but the amount of those colors is going to kind of flip around. All right, so that's it for this one. As mentioned, links for Discord, Instagram, Patreon in the description. If I didn't say it already, definitely helps the channel out. And as always, like and subscribe, I guess. Take care.